everyone to Kentwood Voices. This week I'm speaking with three of our commercial brokerage team members, David Morrison, Karen Landers, and Solveig Lawrence. These three are our powerhouse team in our commercial division. David's been in real estate for 34 years, Karen for 25, and Solveig for 12. So collectively we have a lot of commercial experience to help our clients. So welcome all of you to Kentwood Voices.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So happy to have you. It's really exciting to talk to you about commercial brokerage because I've been learning so much from all of you and just kind of studying up on commercial brokerage. It's really fascinating how different it is from residential, but also how similar in many ways as well. And so one of the things I'm very interested in starting off with is, we'll start with David. What was the catalyst that got you into commercial brokerage, real estate in general, and what background or what interesting highlights from growing up do you bring into your practice?
Thanks. I started my business career at Xerox selling copiers, and after 4.5 years, I realized first I bought my house, and that was kind of a fun real estate transaction, and then secondly, there were 75 people in Denver who came from Xerox and IBM into commercial real estate. And I was recruited and hired by a former Xerox manager. And so I left selling small boxes and came to real estate so I could sell large boxes.
Nice.
That's a good analogy. I like that. Karen, how about you?
I started after I bought my first house. I had just not a great experience and thought, oh my goodness, I kind of like real estate. My dad had industrial buildings and I found everything kind of fascinating. And I thought, well, I can do this. And so I got into real estate by a bad experience.
And you decided you could do it better, and you probably have.
I did decide I could do it better.
I think there are a fair number of us that had that story and got into real estate because we realized if they can do it, so can I.
Right, exactly.
Good for you. And Solveig.
Mine kind of started with my first house too. I bought my first house when I was in college, and I rented it out to my roommates, and always was kind of interested in that. And then kind of took a break and did finance for a little bit and did sports marketing for a little bit, and then was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And my mom said, well, you love real estate. Why don't you do that again? So I did residential for a little bit and then realized that wasn't really for me. And a family friend of mine called and said, hey, why don't you work for me? And I said, what do you do? And he said, well, why don't you come to Chicago and learn a little bit about it? So I went out there and decided it was something I liked and wanted to do. So I came out here and opened an office for him and literally had a desk with a piece of paper and the phone book and a phone. And that's how I started. Basically, he said, you just make every call that you can all day long, and something will come of one of those phone calls. So, yeah.
And with your collective level of experience, we recently had a really interesting conversation about what you foresee for 2021 in commercial brokerage. I was astounded to learn about the amount of subleases that are now on the market. So talk about some of that and where you see brokerage going. Where are the shining lights and what are the headwinds that you're facing? And again, we'll just go in the same order. We'll just do kind of a round. So David?
Well, this year, I believe that the number of subleases has increased by 500% over previous years. There was a informal survey yesterday. Karen and I were taking the issues in real estate law course, and there was a survey, and it ranged from 200 to 500%. And there's just a flood of short-term subleases on the market. The good news is that subleases are relatively short-term, and when the term expires, they either go back to the landlord or have been taken off the market. It's all a function of working at home because of coronavirus, but it is a very indicative sign of the effect on the real estate market, particularly on occupancy levels. And I think it's the most we've seen since 1985, 86, when we had our last major real estate downturn. But we're all optimistic that we'll get through this next year and we'll resume a normal real estate market going forward.
Interesting. So Karen, talk to us about, since you have such a high level of experience with industrial, that's one of your areas, you do everything, but that's one of the areas you've really excelled at and specialized in. What have you seen and what do you predict for commercial real estate in the different sectors next year?
Well, so industrial is different than, say office or retail right now. We're not seeing a lot of sublease space on the market for industrial buildings. The industrial market seems to be thriving. There's a lot of activity. We've closed some industrial deals this year. I've got some others teed up for next year. It's kind of it's sort of the highlight of the real estate market right now, that and owner user buildings.
So Solveig, based on what Karen and David had said, what can you add? You just completed the largest office lease in Denver this year, I think in over many years. It was 2 full floors. It was a big lease in a brand new building in the tech center. So you have a whole unique experience. What is it that you think 2021 looks like in commercial brokerage?
Yeah, I mean, that group, they're in healthcare, so they're obviously doing very well. So, for them being in the office and having an office presence and, especially being in Denver, because they kind of relocated from other cities, they saw that the talent here was really strong. So just as far as Denver goes, I think, you have all these companies moving from Colorado or from California and New York because of the talent that's here and because of the quality of life and all the things that we know are wonderful about Denver. So I think, once people feel more comfortable going back into the office with, vaccines and therapeutics and things like that, I think people want to go back into the office. They don't want to be at home because, I mean, for some people it works, but for many of the clients that I work with, they've just realized that their culture is kind of falling apart. They can't train new employees on Zoom, and they're missing those kind of chance encounters when the guy from marketing, runs across the guy from IT, and they have this, great conversation and something great comes of it. That doesn't happen when you're at home. So I think that towards Q2, Q3 of next year, I think we'll start seeing, many of my clients have said, okay, we're just going to, push it a little bit and do month to month with our landlords. And landlords, of course, are very welcome to do that because they don't want to lose the tenant. And then they're ready to make a decision, I think, come summer of next year. So I think things will come back, and, we're human beings. We want to be with each other. We don't want to be sitting at home by ourselves looking at a screen.
Yeah. Do you feel like there's going to be some sort of hybrid work at home, work in the office?
A little bit more flexibility. I mean, I think people like the idea that, if you have a family and you need to go get your kid, like, it's not as strict as it used to be, I think. And I think that's actually a welcoming thing. I think, companies need to realize that people have lives and there's things outside of work. But I think that it depends on the person you are, right? Like, some people are okay with that, but some people really need structure. So I think there will be more flexibility. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah. Anyone else want to talk a little bit about 2021 or different segments of the markets in commercial before we move on?
I just wanted to add to what Solveig and Karen said. I believe we're going to see a move back away from high density cube benching type of office environments that were promoted by the co-working firms like WeWork toward a more traditional office layout with private offices just based on social distancing. I think that was something that got pushed as far as it could, and then it took a coronavirus pandemic to make people realize that there probably is a reasonable balance, and that will offset the work from home and flexible hours, that there will be set offices and a set amount of office space that companies will now start looking for.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then with the industrial that Karen was talking about, we're just hearing so much about the, Amazon effect and others that need warehousing and staging for all the deliveries. Are you foreseeing us continuing to get a lot of home delivery of goods in the future, or do you feel like that'll be sort of like the work from home, work in the office balance? We're going to go back to shopping outside the home, but this is really impacting warehousing and industrial.
Yeah. I actually think we are going to still see a lot of home deliveries. I think that, the virus is here. It's going to be here for a while. It's going to change, kind of like the flu virus has changed. We're going to have to get vaccinated every year. And they're going to have to try to keep up with what the next strain is. And because it's a little bit more, a lot more contagious than just the flu, I think that we're still going to see people ordering goods and services to their homes. I would love to see people out shopping though, and shopping at local stores. Like, I am a big believer. I've put in so many retailers in Denver who are local, and every year I send out a list to my clients and friends that say, shop local, shop this store, go here, go there. And I'm hoping people still do that with masks on. I mean, we may have to wear masks for a while, I don't know, until everyone gets vaccinated, but I would love to see people out and about shopping, and shopping local, whatever market you're in. I think it's important.
Yeah. I agree. The small retailers, the restaurants, we work with a lot of those smaller independent businesses in your division. And
yeah,
I want to make one comment about industrial demand, and it preceded coronavirus to a certain extent. It was the Amazon effect to a certain extent. Well, what's happened is a lot of retailers have looked at Amazon and looked at Walmart, whether it's soft goods like Macy's, or it's furniture, or it's home repair items, Lowe's and Home Depot. The thing that was happening in the last 2 years is the advent of what's termed supply chain. And I think there was a lot of misunderstanding that Amazon was going to put everybody out of business. Now what we're seeing is, in fact, retailers are getting on board with this. And a lot of the industrial space that's taken are steps in the supply chain: parts, manufactured items, assembled items, and they collaborate and work together. And it's really benefited Denver, because Denver geographically is the center of an 8-state region, and all of the deliveries come out of Denver into those other 8 states. And we're seeing really kind of a nice boom as a result of what's been happening in the last 2 to 3 years in industrial.
Fascinating. This is such an interesting conversation. I'd love to keep it going, but I want to move on and ask you a couple of the questions that we've teed up ahead of time. In the last 5 years, or the last recent memory, what are you now better at saying no to? And I'm going to go to Karen, since David just spoke, and I'm going to go around the circle. What are you better at saying no to?
I have a hard time saying no. I overcommit myself. I do things that I just continue to overcommit myself. And I need to get better at saying no. And Solveig and I have had this discussion with Jen so many times. And I can't say no. But that's my 2021 goal, is to start saying no.
So your answer is
I don't have nothing. I can't
hard.
say no. It sucks.
It's very hard in our industry to say no, and it's also really hard to have a work-life balance. So that's why I asked this question. Solveig, what about you?
So I've learned that, like, in the beginning, when I got into this 12 years ago, I was like yes to all the networking events and all the things and all these, things you could go to find clients. And I learned that there's a lot of them, are really a waste of time. And after having kids, it's hard to like I realized it was actually the kids who kind of made me realize like what's really important. So I think for me, I try to set expectations before when I first meet a new client or a new person who doesn't know me. I just say, as soon as I can. But there are times that, I'm at home with my kids and I put my cell phone somewhere and 4 hours go by and I haven't looked at it because I'm trying to be present and not have my kids, see me like this all the time. So I think, I try to kind of set those boundaries ahead of time, because I think if you let a client call you and text you and email you all the time, they realize that they think that it's okay. And it's not that they're trying to be mean. Like I have a couple of clients, one that I worked with last year who literally did that. And my husband said, "You've got to stop." But I said, well, now I've been working with him for so long, I can't really stop that now. So it was my fault for not setting those expectations in the beginning.
Good. That's a good point. Kind of setting the boundaries and the rules of the road. David, what about you? Have you become good at saying no to anything in recent years?
Yeah, partially. I'm better at saying no to requirements that I intuitively recognize will be a waste of time, where there won't be an outcome. I do still, unfortunately, and Solveig and Karen and Jen will attest to this, drill down to the details sometimes too far, and I'm like a dog on a bone, and it's hard for me to let go. But then the third thing is sort of transitional. We all experience, it's harder to have a work-life balance when you're working solely from home. And I think we're all looking forward to getting back into the office where we can create that natural separation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. So I have just two more quick questions for you. I want to know what bad recommendations you hear in our industry. You want to start, David?
Yeah, I believe that the notion of handing somebody a phone book like Solveig referred to, unfortunately, is not the best recommendation for young brokers to spend their whole life on the phone making cold calls. I think a lot of people resent being called, out of the blue, and I think that it's more important to establish relationships than it is just to establish contacts.
Yeah.
It's a relationship business. Karen?
I think we talked about this a little bit before, but telling people that they don't need a broker or allowing people to try to represent themselves, that's always a bad idea. It always seems to go nowhere, and then no one feels like they've won and everybody feels like they've lost.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's really hard to know the nuances, especially in commercial. And the brokerage fee is just factored in, so you're not going to necessarily save money. What you do is you lose a fiduciary who's in there coaching you.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, kind of losing money anyway, because you didn't have anyone standing up for you, and the landlord's broker obviously doesn't care about you as much. So they say that you're getting a good deal, but you're really not.
You're really not. Yeah.
So Solveig, is that the same for you then? The bad recommendation is to go unrepresented?
Yeah, I would say so. And I also agree with Dave. I mean, when after months of doing that with the phone book thing, I realized, okay, this is not working. And I started really tapping into people I know and, reaching out. I think a lot of times people misunderstand that, and they think that they're being pushy if they ask for a referral or ask their friends for help. Because most people, I think, if they're your friend, really, really want to help you. I know when someone asks me, like, do you know someone or can you meet with this young person? And I'm like, absolutely, I would love to do that. And I think a lot of times people think that they're being annoying, but when they're really not. So, yeah.
Good. All right, one last question, then we're going to wrap up and say goodbye for this Kentwood Voices. And the last question is, I'm really curious to know, what do you do when you feel overwhelmed or frustrated? Our business is really taxing. So how do you bring yourself back to center? How do you re-engage and kind of keep that level of energy up that you need to for both your business and your family? David?
Maybe it's because I'm a little bit older and have been doing this a long time, but I'm a pretty centered person, and I find my center just through breathing. I have pretty low blood pressure, and I can let things roll off after maybe reacting. And I do a lot of, exercise, walking, skiing, golfing, and spending a lot of time with my family. And I think by focusing on other people in my family, take some of the focus off myself and my issues.
Mm-hmm.
Good one. Karen.
Yeah, that's a good one. Normally I will take a break and go for a walk. It's the only way I can clear my head. If I'm thinking of solving a problem for a client or solving a personal problem or whatever comes at me, I'll just go take a walk and kind of think about things and then come back and revisit it.
Yeah,
And
I
I
like
also love, yeah, I also love spending time with my family and getting out and doing things with them. But taking a walk during the middle of the day is the best thing that I can do for myself and for everyone else around me.
that's good. It kind of clears your head, I guess. And Solveig,
Yeah.
what do you do
Yeah.
when you
I
need to
agree
clean
with
yourself?
Dave and Karen. I love to just get outside and either exercise or go skiing or just kind of get out into the nature, which is, we're lucky that we have so much here. And then I also, if I have something that I'm thinking about and I can't really figure out how to deal with it, I think we've talked about this before, but I could put it in a little bubble and send it out to the universe and realize that, the answer will come and, whatever will be, will be. So sometimes you just can't push things. I feel like sometimes if you're trying to push into a door, it's not working. Like you have to kind of step back, let it go, take a deep breath, and there's another way around.
Great. On that note, we're going to put all of our stress in a bubble this afternoon. We're going to let it go off into the universe. And I just really appreciate all of you taking the time today to speak with me. Your conversation about the commercial brokerage and commercial sectors was fascinating. I really enjoyed hearing what your perspectives are. It just shows what a great team we have in David Morrison and Karen Landers and in Solveig Lawrence, part of our commercial brokerage team, who you should absolutely be contacting if you need representation. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gretchen.